I am Dr. Avinash Madhukar Chincholkar, presently Principal of Vidya Prasarak Mandal Thane's Maharshi Parshuram College of Engineering at Veldneshwar, Taluka Guhagar, District Ratnagiri. I am in the teaching profession for the last 30 years. My doctorate is from IIT Madras in Mechanical Engineering, and I welcome you all to this session. And without wasting any more of our time, let us get down to the business. Madam, please invite the first presenter.
Hello everyone. I am Pooja Nigam, Dr. Pooja Nigam from MNIT Jaipur. He is my friend. Can you hear me? Any problem? Okay. Okay.
It's just for the camera. No, it's just mic is for the camera.
Okay. Thank you. Starting again. Hello everyone. I am Pooja Nigam from MNIT Jaipur. He is my friend Sangeet Sudarshanan Pillai from IIT Roorkee, and we both are presenting. Actually, we both are from architecture and planning background, so we both are presenting this paper. Does smart mean high tech? Redefining smart for the city towards evolution of an Indian smart urban typology. You might have been hearing this word smart city a lot lately. This has been throwing like a buzzword to all of you since the present government has been in power. We in India are trying to convert or transform our cities into smart cities, but what is happening is that there's a lot of ambiguity regarding this. We do not know. Most of the people, they think smart cities means the use of ICT and everything, and the rest of the people, they don't have any idea regarding smart cities. But first of all, when we want to talk about smart cities, we have to know what cities are. And before we want to get into the planning of cities, we have to know about the human behavior and how people behave. So there is a very famous quote by a very famous American poet: "In vain do we build the city if we do not first build the man." So when we are talking about planning, we always have to talk about the community's participation and people's aspirations. This is what we have talked about. There have been so many conferences, there have been so many discussions, meetings all regarding smart cities concept in India. Since 2015, since the government has talked about it in June 2016, but still people do not know what smart cities are. And first of all, this smart cities concept has been ambiguous not just here but within European countries and US also. But the other issue is that the concept of smart city has to be different within the Western countries and the Indian context. The reason is that if we consider our cities as urban systems where there are a lot of subsystems, namely transportation, sewerage and other physical infrastructures or other social infrastructures, the way they are interconnected, the way they are interlinked, they behave very differently as compared to their Western counterparts. Like for example, you are not going to find the kind of modal split we have in transportation system in Indian cities. Like you are not going to find a bullock cart running or moving like in our Indian cities, anywhere in our Western counterparts. And moreover, why this government has been stressing so much upon smart cities lately is the reason that the kind of pace at which the urbanization is happening within our country. It is projected that by the end of, it has been found out that 31.16% of population has been living in urban areas, and it has been predicted that 50% of India's population will be living within cities due to the higher growth rate or the migration within the next 10 years. Then one thing, most of the people, they think that when we use the word smart along with the city, it is just regarding the use of ICT. But the government, the Ministry of Urban Development has actually provided a tentative guidelines, but still it has provided guidelines where it has talked about rest of the things also apart from ICT. It has provided certain guidelines or strategies where they have talked about retrofitting. First of all, retrofitting, where they will be picking up 500 acres area with the help of obviously the citizens, because they are going to promote communities participation. So they'll be picking 500 acres of area, and they'll be retrofitting it, in the sense that they'll be providing more of infrastructure where there is a lack of infrastructure. Then the other approach will be that they might be redeveloping it completely, which where they are going to pick up 50 acres of area, and they'll be completely transforming it with a new layout, either transforming the land use or even again the infrastructural part, and they'll be replicating that particular 50 acres model into the rest of the city area. Then there is one greenfield development. Greenfield development is, there are actually two kinds of developments in that context. One is greenfield development, where you develop a fresh area along the fringe areas, or the or the fringes, or the peripheral city, and the other one is brownfield development, which hasn't been talked about in the document, where you develop the existing areas which are either vacant, like example, if we take an example, there might be a factory which has been shut down, and that area might not be getting used within the last 10 years or 20 years, and we may tend to develop it in case of retrofitting or redevelopment, but it hasn't been talked about in this document. Then there is Pan City development. This is the only approach which talks about the smart solutions in detail. Ki will be applying whatever smart solutions we have according to the city specific case across the whole city. Next. So we have seen ki what can be the issues or challenges or the flaws or the issues within the smart cities proposals or the guidelines provided by the central government. First of all, when we talk about the retrofitting or redeveloping, first, they are going to pick just either 500 acres or 50 acres, and that might create a development gap within the time period it is going to develop between the areas which will be developed and the areas which won't be. The next is ki, when they talk about greenfield development, in planning context, we are already facing a problem of urban sprawl, and if we are going to focus so much on greenfield development, it is going to worsen the situation furthermore. Then if we look at the documents of the MOUD, they nowhere talk about the informal sector, urban poor, slum dwellers. We are actually catering to the elite sections of the society. Like for example, the first and the best plan of Indian of our country is Chandigarh, which was planned by Le Corbusier, and even that, he was a French architect, and even that person when designed Chandigarh, he didn't take care of this issue कि we have to incorporate the slum dwellers, the informal sector, the thela walas, the rickshaw walas, the street hawkers. They have to be accommodated within the within our guidelines or within our city premises. And it's like कि most of the planners, when they think of planning any city, they think of keeping it clean, but they don't realize it कि these informal sector has to be a part of this our planning. Now I'll hand over the charge to Sangeet.
Yes, so as Pooja has just elaborated to you, there are a lot of issues when you're just trying to like graft the idea of a smart city or anything from one country somewhere in Europe right away into India, because we have like we have a totally different ball game. Like India is a totally different culture and a tradition. So from that, along with that culture and tradition, there is technology and innovation coming in. So we have to merge it and to create a new kind of typology of smart city, which can become the Indian smart city. So how far we have achieved towards this? Next, please. So I mean, in our traditional and vernacular culture, there is like products which are products or approaches or kinds of cities or typology which are developed over many years. Like the refinement has happened in a brute force, like some things failed, some things succeeded. That kind of a refinement has happened. In modern and digital paradigm, you test a device or a technology, you will not know what is the long-term impact of the technology or what happens. Like for example, the Uber and Ola culture, which is in our transportation system right now, we don't know what will happen to a certain aspect of society, but once it is running for 20 to 30 years. You know? So when we are talking about like such a smart city, like she's previously mentioned, it's not just about implementing some grafting some technology into the existing cities or something like that, but it should include the emphasis should be on real-time ICT technologies which can be merged into the typology of an Indian city, how it can be Indianized, how it can function well in an Indian context. So that is the kind of focus we need to have. Next, please. So smart city is an IoT ecosystem. You all now, every one of us, like we all hear these two terms generally every day in news and all. IoT, which is Internet of Things, and big data analysis. So these are two like major paradigms in information communication technology which is coming up. So the smart city also is a kind of a larger IoT. It's a larger Internet of Things. When we say Internet of Things, we are saying that the Internet is not the agents in the Internet as not just people like us, but also devices like a pen, a bench, a light, a tube light, a fan. All this will be part or nodal agents for an Internet. So then, like a fan may detect that the number of people coming into this room is more, and it can increase its speed, or it can increase the amount of ventilation that can happen. That is the whole idea of Internet of Things. So if a smart city has to function in an optimum, in a synergy, all these piecemeal elements like an Uber car or a street light or a traffic signal, all of this small element has to be plugged into one single larger web of interconnections and optimization. So how far we are into that? So that's a larger question. Next, please. So I just talked about the big data because if we are talking about all these devices being smart, like if the projector and the fan and the tube light, everything is connected to our internet, it is throwing a huge amount, it is streaming a huge amount of data. Right now, while with only the laptops and mobile phones connected to the internet, we know the amount of data we are transferring. Just imagine the kind of information that will be generated if all the small things which constitute the Internet of Things are generating so much of data. So we'll have a big data stream, which is like a floodgate of data opening up, like one of the previous presenters was talking about data. So how to parse data. Right now, only big companies like Google or Facebook has the capacity to do that. Can a city like Pune or Jaipur or Delhi or somewhere, can a city process the data and do optimum results for the citizens? That's a big question. Are we prepared for such a kind of an optimization? Before that, maybe jumping into smart city paradigm will maybe ultimately foolish, unless in other ways we have the capacity to do that. Next, please. So, I mean, I'm just 2 minutes. Yeah, I'll just go through fast. In this slide, I was trying to tell that this is a famous slogan from Raghuvamsha. I mean, one of the opening slogans. It's Atitarasyamdiji Devadatma. The slogan talks about like how Himalaya is standing as a Manadanda, a measuring scale in the top of like in the Asia-China that plateau. And while the author Kalidasa is talking about in a metaphorical way, I want to look at it in a different way, talking that we ourselves was a benchmark. Manadanda means benchmark. So India at a time, in the prehistory, we were, even in the ancient history, we were like a strong benchmark for the rest of the world. And if we are a benchmark, we don't have to adapt and just copy paste something from a Western culture. Instead, we can develop our own typology of smart city. Next, please. So in the Indian context, we can boast of like our previous cities like Harappa, Mohenjo-daro, or even Vijayanagara or Hampi, like very recent cities in Bhopal, even places like Bhopal, where we can boast of excellent civil infrastructure. I mean, we are always good at that, and what happened in post-independence is another story, but we need to relook at it. We also have like excellent treatises on how to delineate a city, like Samarangana Sutradhara or Mayamata or Tantra Samuchaya. They all talked about Nagara Vinyasa, how to delineate a city. I mean, we started talking about cities and making them smart from like last 3,000 to 4,000 years. Somebody from the West doesn't have to teach us how to make a smart city. Next, please. So, in the Indian context, I think usually urban planning, as we said, is a complicated and a complex affair. We know the planner may make a good scheme, the engineer may support it very well, but the politician will rip it into pieces and make it something else. So that's a kind of game which we are playing in India. So a mere ICT intervention, like bringing a lot of technology from a foreign country, will not help us. But if that happens without proper management and strategy, it will become just a mere technological decoration and cosmetics, some kind of a face cream which we are buying from Europe or US and putting on our faces. It will just become like that, and we don't want that to happen. We want our cities to be actually smart. Quickly, please, next. So the conclusions and discussions of our paper is that we are talking about there should be a drive to develop R&D groups and startups. Like we have a lot of startup culture happening in India, but where this effort is going, what percent of this are getting successful is a different story. So maybe we can channel this young energy which is making all the startups into develop infrastructure and technology for housing the Indian kind of smart city. That is one possibility. Then in the Western model of smart city, it is capital intensive. Like yesterday we were in another event where there was a couple of German companies. We were talking like their devices are so expensive, and they're talking about like automatically street lights which are automatically switching on and off. I was just trying to comment that such a kind of a high capital technology cannot work in India because we don't run on high capital. I mean, we all know about the story of Mangalyaan mission of ISRO, where we literally talk about sending a probe to Mars at the cost of auto rickshaw fare. I mean, that's the kind of technology we use. So maybe we need to develop such technology. Next, please. So we conclude with this statement that the government of India has to do emphasis on culture-specific innovation for the Indian kind of smart city. We should develop indigenous R&D on technology and systems, not only technology but also in systems management. Once the technology is in place, how do we manage, repair or maintain it? We are human resource intensive. That's our big difference from a European city. The people and the numbers are our biggest asset and our curse. I mean, how to use that advantage to us to make our smart city. The startup ecosystem I told previously also, the government should declare targeted mentoring and funding schemes for startups which are working on smart city solutions. Like we all know how the whole Uber and Ola game has changed our transportation within the city. If one smart technology using a mobile phone can do that, what not can be done? Next please. So that's our references. Next please. Next. So yeah, I mean, that's a Shanti mantra from our tradition. It speaks about Bhadram Karnebi Shrunyamadeva. Like, if we do optimize and manage our resources properly and integrate these ICT technologies properties, we can make a world which is pleasant to be visited.